guest on my show today has an incredible story to share with all of you. It's been quite a journey for her as she battled an illness for over 20 years. Illness includes symptoms of sleepiness, hopelessness, feeling worthless about yourself, loss of appetite, loss of weight. These are symptoms of depression. My guest today is Deborah Hurley, and she's suffered with depression for over 20 years. She's finally doing so much better with her life now and getting life back on track. She's also wrote a book about her experiences, which she'll share with you in just a little while. Everyone, please welcome Deborah Hurley to the show. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
Nice to see you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very welcome. I feel that you have a very important story to share with everybody. And we have your book here. I'm just going to hold it up real quick. It's called Fragments of Hope. Okay, and it's a book all about how you suffered through depression for over 20 years and what you think may have caused it, what people felt may have caused it. You're here to share your story today, and I think that's incredibly brave and courageous of you.
Thank you.
Tell me, what was life like growing up for you when you were younger before you started suffering with depression?
I actually had a very normal life. I'm from a family that gave me a lot of love and support. I was always a very deep child. I was bubbly, but I always questioned things. I was a very introspective, kind of serious. So by the time I hit adolescence, I just kind of had a predisposition, I think, to become depressed. And at the time that my hormones kicked in, that's kind of when things just started for me. But childhood and familyhood life was good. I don't have any memories of anything going wrong or anything bad. So.
Okay. And there is one specific thing that I've read in your book, in several chapters actually. It's you growing up without your biological father in your life. Do you think that something like that may have contributed to all these years of depression?
Absolutely. I was told when I was 13 that my father, who my mom married a wonderful person when I was about 3 or 4, and he adopted us and raised us as his own, but I was told when I was a teenager that he was not my real dad, that when my mom finished high school, she had 3 children, and when I was a baby, my birth father had left. Unfortunately, he disappeared and really was nowhere to be found. So, there was no contact, there was no getting in touch with him, and that really started the ball rolling of feelings of insecurity, feelings of unworthiness, feelings of guilt, shame. And then when I fell in love, I started to feel that, if somebody that close to me, who created me, could leave, why couldn't somebody else? Why wouldn't my boyfriend or why wouldn't my husband? So I absolutely feel that something like that has a huge impact on a person and follows you through life.
So all those adolescent years of you growing up without your biological father and then knowing the truth that he had left so many years ago, you really feel that it contributed to the start of this depression?
Absolutely.
I read in your book that some doctors think that it was the birth of your first child, Brendan, who gave you or I should say you got postpartum depression. It led from that, but you really feel that it was much further back than that.
Honestly, I do. I feel had I never had children that this depression was going to happen anyway. I think that in a lot of cases, depression is hereditary, and being that I do not know my birth father and any history in his family, so I don't know, if people were ill on his side of the family or not, but I definitely think, aside from the genetic component, this was going to happen. I just think the childbirth and the change of hormones and realizing that there was a piece of me that I didn't know, that I might never know or understand. Those are all contributing factors, definitely.
Okay. So other than your biological father missing from your life, is there any other traumatic events that you could think of that may have led to this depression?
To be honest with you, I think that was the big one. I think childbirth was huge. I remember Brendan being 10 days old and just something happened to my body, and it went from a postpartum depression it just snowballed into a major depression. It was really unstoppable. No matter what doctors did, no matter what medication I tried, it just kind of manifested itself and just took on a life of its own.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so sad, it really is. I mean, your book is so very powerful, which, you know, we will get to in just a little bit. But what type of depression were you diagnosed with? Because there is many out there. I believe that you were diagnosed with the most common type of depression. Major depression?
Yes, they called it a major depression without psychosis, so I was never psychotic, but definitely major depressive disorder, which is really pretty serious. It's, you know, I think that although depression is, we're talking about it much more, I still think it's really misunderstood, and I still think it's taken very lightly.
What are some of the symptoms that you've experienced with this type of depression that maybe other people who are at home watching right now might be experiencing it and not know what it is?
I think for me, the biggest symptom that I've felt is, you know, aside from your typical symptoms of loss of interest in activities and, you know, kind of feeling numb to your emotions and not really being able to feel love or to give love, those were big symptoms for me. My major depression is very episodic, which means there's a distinct beginning and there's a distinct end. They come. It's almost like I can feel it coming on, and there's almost no stopping it. It's kind of like, I kind of describe it like a seizure almost, that I can feel it happening, and then when it takes over, I just have to do whatever I can do to get through that moment. It will end. Sometimes it takes a day, sometimes it takes 2 weeks. And I know now, after all of these years, what it takes to endure it. But back then, I really didn't, and the suffering was really unbearable.
It really was. I mean, from what I read in your book, I mean, there were chapters that actually brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah, it was bad.
And there were things that I could actually relate to you in there, so I really felt for you there. About what age were you when you started feeling these symptoms? You were very young.
I was. I had both of my children in my mid-20s, so I was probably about, I would say by the time things got really serious as far as depression, I was probably about 27.
Okay. And you were already a young mother. You had given birth twice already by that time.
Yes.
How did you cope with this, with your family life? I mean, how did you definitely stayed focused as a mom. How did you find the strength to do that when all these emotions were going through you all the time?
It was really hard. And I think that, you know, that's kind of, I don't want to get off the topic of that question, but that's kind of what prompted me to write this book, was because there was no answers. No matter how many questions I asked or how many books I read, there was nobody who told me, how do you raise children while suffering with this? How do you keep your marriage going while suffering with this? You know, and it was extremely difficult, but something inside of me always felt that my children didn't ask for this situation, and my children deserve to have me in their life.
Absolutely.
And they deserve to have a happy mom and dad, a happily married mom and dad in their life. That's what I felt they deserved. So there was just a strong feeling inside of me that I would do whatever it took to keep our family together, and I would get whatever help I needed to make that happen.
And you did try to get a lot of help. I mean, I remember a portion in your book, you were actually living out of state, your husband was on business, you had your newborn in your arms trying to go to a support group, and you were turned away.
I was.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was really hard.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I just can't begin to imagine, you know, somebody like you who's a young mom and in a strange place. You don't come from there. You're trying to get yourself help, and people turn you away. It blew my mind.
You know, one of the reasons I'm revealing all that I want to reveal in this book, and I'll be writing another book, is because I want people to know that, you know, and I'm not saying anything bad about celebrities or people, you know, who are in the public eye that suffer, but I'm like everybody else who suffers. I didn't have the help. I lived upstate. I had no family. I had no friends. I had to really do this on my own. And there was a support group. I read that there was a support group, and it was just for moms. You weren't allowed to bring your baby, but my husband was out of town. He kind of traveled a lot, and I was very depressed. And I was depressed to the point where I didn't know if I was going to make it through the night. So I looked myself in the mirror and said, you're either going to drive yourself to the hospital tonight with the baby, or you're going to try and reach out and go to the support group. So I decided to go to the support group. I did bring him. He was maybe a week old, and they turned me away at the door.
I couldn't even believe.
And they said, absolutely not.
It just blew my mind when I read that because, you know, like I said, I mean, you're a young mom. You're trying to get yourself help. You're doing the right thing.
I
and
did.
Doing that,
I tried.
And I couldn't even
Yeah.
believe.
I went home and I called my mom and I cried like I've never cried before, and she just talked to me for, I think, 3 or 4 hours just to get me through hour by hour, because I couldn't believe that people could be so heartless.
Absolutely.
And it really made me realize how they just don't understand the depth of this illness.
They
I mean,
really
I could have
don't.
so
I mean-
easily left that night and that could have been it. But, you know, thank goodness I did have the strength, I think because of my children, to carry on.
You did contemplate with suicide on several occasions.
Absolutely.
It did get that bad.
Yes.
Did you find that the depression worsened over the years as you've had it, or did it kind of maybe stay neutral or stable for a period of time?
It's gotten worse. Yeah, it's definitely gotten worse. With each child, they say, too, that, you know, after my daughter was born, I had my son, and then 2 years later I had my daughter, and, you know, my doctors said, you know, you really cannot have any more children. So I was about 28, and I had a tubal ligation, which was devastating to me. But again, I did that, you know, with the family in mind,
Right.
because I knew the more children you have, the worse your depression gets with each child. But through the years, my depression has definitely gotten much more intense, much more severe. Symptoms have lasted longer, and yeah, it's been tough. The good news is that through therapy and through, you know, everything I've researched and the hard work I've done, is I've acquired the tools that I need
Right.
to help myself. You know, there are things you can do to help yourself. It doesn't take away the depression. It doesn't stop it from coming. It doesn't make the episodes go away. But it definitely helps me endure them better.
So it's not that you're fully cured from depression at this time. It just helps you to, like you said, endure them better.
Yes.
And, okay. So
I don't, you know, in my opinion, I don't think you're ever cured from depression.
Right.
I think it's an illness that you can manage, but it never goes away. It's something that's with you, that you live with, and you just have to learn what to do and how to manage it. So I mean, I know that I could wake up tomorrow and not feel well. I don't know what's lying around the next corner, but I take it day by day still, every day.
And this illness of depression also led to other illnesses that you've had as well. I remember reading something in your book that you had a mass on your breast.
Yeah.
Luckily it wasn't cancerous, but that was a pretty devastating moment for you as well.
Yeah. You know, when you suffer with this illness in such a severe way, it definitely weakens your immune system, and your body becomes susceptible to other illnesses. And I believe that that was part of what happened. And I remember also, I woke up one day and I was numb from the waist down. I had no feeling in my legs.
Wow.
That lasted a couple of weeks. And I believe, too, that that was all part of this illness. It kind of rears itself in different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing, it really is, but not in a good way at all. Holidays and birthdays were not fun for you either,
No,
were they?
I just despise them.
Yeah.
Yeah, for years and years and years and years. I just despised them. Yeah. Until this day, the holidays make me uneasy. I start to feel a little bit anxious and very uneasy, like right after Halloween, because I know Thanksgiving's coming, Christmas is coming, and New Year's, and those three occasions I do not do well in.
Why did you despise the holidays so much like that? What were you feeling when Thanksgiving rolled around and Christmas rolled around, and these were very joyous times for so many other people and even members of your family, but you weren't feeling very happy to be there.
Yeah.
What were you feeling?
I think when something takes over your mind, you really it's one tough illness because you're wrestling with your mind and you're wrestling with your thoughts. So I think part of it is just the depression was there, and I just saw everything. Everything was just black to me. No matter, we went on very beautiful trips through my husband's work, and I remember being in Hawaii just devastated, just, sitting there hysterical crying. Like there was no place on earth that you could have put me that would have made me happy.
That's so sad.
And I also feel that, I also kind of felt that I didn't want to celebrate with people that were not able to be there for me during my worst times.
Right.
I'm kind of a black and white person, which is not that good. I need to learn how to be a little more gray. But I kind of felt like, I don't want to laugh and party with you if you don't know how to support me during my very worst times. It just seemed, it didn't go with how I felt in my heart.
Right. But your husband did stick by you all these years. You're still happily married. You
Yeah.
have 2 beautiful children. Actually, Lauren did our prom show several weeks ago
Yeah.
here. It was a great show with her. I mean, you have a beautiful family. How did they support you throughout all of this? What did they do for you that brought you comfort? Because you still, no matter what, you were always a mom. I read that in your book. You were always a mom, and that's so important.
Yeah.
And I absolutely commend you for that.
Thank you. How did, I have to say, my biggest supporter was my husband, and I had many people telling me, you better, after 15 years of this, you've better figure this out because he's going to walk out the door. No man could take this, could endure this. And, I think they were trying to snap me out of it and make me realize that he's human, but there is no coming out of something like that. There is no willing an illness away. So luckily, I think we have a strong foundation. That's really it. For whatever reason, he loves me, and I remember him saying to me many times that this is not you, and the real Debbie's in there, and I'm waiting for her to come back.
Because you never felt like you deserved to be loved,
No,
right?
no. Yeah,
It's amazing what the illness does to your mind because,
Yeah.
I'm looking at you're a beautiful, still young woman with a beautiful family, and it's
Yeah.
just amazing how strong this type of illness is. And so many Americans out there, probably in the millions, suffer from this.
They do.
And some don't have a name for it, So you sharing your story today, I think, is very brave and courageous of you because people may be out there suffering now that don't have a name for it. Now, I want to just rewind a little bit and go back to the beginning. We talked about that your biological father was not in your life growing up all those years, and that was devastating for you. But later on, several years ago, you actually found him.
I
You found
did.
him yourself. How did you do that?
I hired somebody, and when I want something, it happens. So the same way I wanted to survive, that survival instinct just kicks in different areas. So I made it a point to, I said to myself, if he is alive, as long as he is alive and I'm alive, I will find him and I will see him.
And he wasn't actually that far away from you, only an hour and a half.
Yeah, no, he lives on Long Island, and he is married. He never had any other biological children, and he was shocked. I was 28 years old, and I called him and told him who I was and asked him if he would be willing to meet me. And I just said, I just want to see you. I just want to see what you look like. And he agreed, and we did. And, I wanted that to be enough, but after that meeting, it didn't feel like enough. I wanted to see him again, and I wanted to talk to him and just get to know him as a person. And to be honest with you, he really wasn't interested.
Really?
So
That's so sad.
Yeah.
It really is.
yeah,
Because it's you, and you have another sister that I know of. I don't know
I
how many
do.
other siblings you have, but it's just amazing to me how men can do that.
Yeah.
How they develop families and then they just pick up and leave. And
Yeah.
he actually took the family's only car when he disappeared.
He did.
I mean, it's
yeah, he left us with nothing, absolutely nothing.
that's so incredibly sad.
Yeah, and it's funny because all three of us have handled it differently. I have an older brother, and then my sister, and then myself. And we've all handled it differently. I don't want to speak for them, but in my case, I seem to be the only one who has questioned and, seeked him out and wanted to see him, wanted to find him. And I seem to be the curious one. So, and in some ways, I think that's healthy. In other ways, it's been hard, and it's hurt very deeply.
I can understand.
Yeah.
I can. I mean, my mother grew up as a single mother, just raising me. My father's almost the same situation as yours, so I totally can relate to what you're saying. But when you actually spoke on the phone with him, that anticipation of him being on the other line, from what I read in your book about it, your husband handed you the phone. I mean, what was that moment like for you?
I was shaking. My whole body was shaking. And I had to prepare myself, and I did that through therapy. I prepared myself for rejection, and because it could have gone either way. And I was ready to take it. I was ready to say, you know what, I have to do this. I'll take the rejection, but if I don't do this, I'll never know. So I was shaking, yeah. And luckily, he did want to meet me. And through the last 15 years, I have been in contact with him, I would say maybe 5 times. And the last time I talked to him, I was told that, he and his wife just don't have time for me. They just can't fit this in his life. So that was hard, and I think that that's hard for people out there too who don't know their biological parent, and then maybe as an adult they discover their biological parent and they present themselves to that parent as an adult. And then when you get that rejection again, in some ways it's even more devastating.
Especially at an older age.
Yeah, because I thought, here I am, a woman, that, I'm showing myself to you, and you're still looking at me saying, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So,
it just blows my mind. I'm so sorry for that. I really am. Because I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I haven't had contact with my father in over 20 years, and nobody even on his side of the family knows where he is. So I can understand where you're coming from on that. But everybody also handles it differently. Like you were saying that, your siblings handle it differently for you. But for you, you needed to know, and you did what you had to do.
I'm a questioner. I'm a questioner. I think about things to a fault because I want answers, and I just want the truth.
Did you find that experience overall did help you?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. Even knowing now that, I never got my apology, and even knowing now that ultimately, he's not interested, it still helps because I have closure and I know the truth. I'm a big believer in truth. There's no